Mind blown. First of all, I can't believe it didn't strike me before this that Kipo and the Age of Wonderbeasts ended less than a year from the time the first season was released on Netflix. I honestly thought season 1 came out last year. With only 30 episodes in total, this has got to be one of the most well-structured animated shows I've watched in a very long time. Each season has its own well-contained story arc, with season 1 focusing on Kipo trying to find her way back to her burrow, season 2 with Kipo learning to control her Mega Jaguar form and trying to stop Scarlemagne, and season 3 centering on the conflict between Team Kipo and the evil Dr. Emilia. But at the same time, all 3 seasons float from one after the other extremely smoothly because they are linked together by the same goals, values, and backstories of our main characters. And for me, I'd rather have a show that's short but properly planned out from start to finish instead of a much longer show that was great at first, but towards the end, kind of snowballed into a firestorm of utter mess. Hi everyone! Welcome to my channel. I'm your host, Peter, and today I'm going to be expressing my thoughts and feelings on Season 3 of Kipo and the Age of Wonderbeasts. Also, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and click for notifications so that you will know when my next upload is. Which, by the way, my next video will be on Troyson, so you won't want to miss it. In this particular video, I will be diving deep into major spoiler territory, so please watch the entire show if you haven't. Otherwise, thanks for staying, and let's get popping with the discussion, starting with the highs of the season. Humans and mutes have historically been at odds with each other since the Great Mute Outbreak that started centuries ago. Dave perfectly visualizes this with the story he told Kipo in episode 7 about how it has always been this never-ending war between the two groups. Although, when thinking back on Dave's perspective, I'm not sure if I believe the conflict he had with the humans was actually centered around a damn minifan. That seems ludicrous, even for Dave. But at the same time, I do believe the story he told about how he and Benson met, which still had to do with the minifan, so I don't know. Anyways, in Season 3, tensions reached a boiling point due to Dr. Emilia's mission to rally the humans in order to forcibly cure the mutes, using the cure she was successful in making so that humans can reign supreme on the surface once again. As a result, this puts a lot of pressure on Kipo to be the so-called mediator of the two opposing groups, which is fitting for someone like Kipo since she is half mute. She's practically the avatar of the show, but instead of bridging humans and spirits, she bridges humans and mutes together. She also establishes HMUFA, which stands for Human Mute Ultimate Friendship Alliance, which for the life of me I can't bring myself to like that group name, but I digress. In episode 6, Dr. Emilia and her followers were successful in infiltrating Timbercat Village, and despite doing their best to defend themselves against the humans, many of the mutes were unfortunately struck by the Cure Dart, which eventually caused the already shaky alliance to break. However, Kipo was determined to make the humans understand and sympathize with the mutes, and she was eventually lucky enough to be able to sway most of the humans to break away from Emilia. And it wasn't just Kipo doing the work. The humans including Benson, Troy, Wolf, Asher, Dahlia, and Kipo's parents, as well as mutes like Dave, Label, and Jamak all set a wonderful example of what harmony between humans and mutes should look like. Also, wasn't it great seeing Jamak and Kipo interact as friends this season? They've come such a long way since Season 1. He even used the line Kipo said to him in Season 1, which was, "You need to do some soul searching," in the season finale to Emilia this time. We will also introduce to new human characters who swiftly became part of the alliance, such as Asher and Dahlia's parents, Lily and Earl, and Hoag's daughter Doge, who seems to represent those crazy K-pop fangirls, I'm just saying. Just like how Dave is paired off with Benson in their tight mute-human friendship, I love how each mute has their own little bonding thing going on with one or a couple of the humans. For example, There's Earl and Lily with Molly, Zane with Label, whom, by the way, is my second favorite mute-human friendship behind Dave and Benson, Mr. Filburn with Amy, we got Mrs. Graham with Jamak, and so on and so forth. And that whole prom thing that was set up by Kipo really helped them to mend their relationship, despite how ridiculous the idea sounded at first. Seeing little moments like these that don't involve the main characters is one of the things that makes this show special to me. Plus, it gave a great excuse for us to see the main human characters dressed up in formal wear. I also can't not bring up the mute children, especially those cute timber kittens. Every time they show up on my screen, I just go, aww, because they are just so precious and their voices are very cute too. So, all of this culminated to what we saw in that beautiful epilogue in the season finale, which is a world where mutes and humans are living harmoniously on the surface of Las Vistas together. And can we talk about that gym Zane and Label opened together? Sign me up. These two are so made for each other. I wonder if it's wrong to ship a mute with a human. Just asking. I've mentioned it before in one of my written episode reviews on Tumblr that whether you love or hate this woman, Emilia is a damn good villain. She's not only determined, she's also strategic, and she can throw it down if she needs to. Have you seen the way she fights? For a seemingly middle-aged woman, she can go toe-to-toe against Kipo, even in her half-mute form. Now that's impressive. I truly believe that her purpose for doing all the bad stuff she's done is something that we can all understand as the human race. We humans like to think of ourselves as the dominant species on Earth, and Dr. Emilia represents that mentality to a certain extent. But of course, I don't think most of us would go around shooting family members and shit, but I really get her as a villain and as a character in general. Besides that, this might be an unpopular opinion, but I don't think her backstory, as revealed in episode 9 as a kid growing up in the borough with her dad and her brother Liam, was that necessary to show. I mean, it was nice to see how her family dynamic was like and all, but not showing these flashbacks wouldn't really change my mind about how I feel about Emilia. Usually, backstories are thrown in to give the viewers context as to what motivates a show's character. But with Emilia, there wasn't much of a need to get into that because her motivations were completely understandable. However, if there is one thing that made me slightly view her in a different light that's more negative, was when she murdered her sweet brother Liam in broad daylight without much hesitation in one of the flashbacks. He took a cute selfie with you that same day, Emilia. Why you gotta do him like that? But to be fair, I'm sure she's carrying around that guilt pretty heavily since then, as she's still holding on to that selfie of her and Liam. In the series finale, Emilia injects herself with a cure sourced from a Mega Walrus's DNA to transform herself into a scary-looking two-headed Megamute to take on Kipo's Mega Jaguar form. I actually didn't expect her to do that since she was so anti-mute. Like, why would she want to turn herself into the thing she absolutely despises, even if it's just temporary? I guess she was really that desperate to win. Instead, I thought she was gonna use the walrus's DNA to make another cure that would have an effect on Kipo. Plus, who knows, that plan I just mentioned might have actually given her the win since Kipo is so terrible at avoiding darts. As for Emilia's eventual fate on the show, she pretty much got a fate worse than death, since she has now become Fungus's new plaything, and you know how aggressive Fungus can be when he plays with his so-called friends. Not to mention, Emilia hates mutes, and probably kids in general, so she's gonna have a fun time with him for sure, I know that's right. The introduction of the cure that was made from Kipo's DNA really made me view Dr. Emilia as a legitimate threat, not just to Kipo and her friends, but to every single mute in Las Vistas. There's one thing to have a cure, but it's another thing to actually use it, not just once, but multiple times. So that made me go, whoa, she's not playing around. And as we all know, it wasn't just Yamyen who got cured. We saw one member of almost every main mute group being cured, including Camille, Wheels, Bad Billions, and poor Brad. Apart from Yamyen, I was very upset about what happened to Brad. It was so sad to see Amy without her best friend around. I mean, physically he's still with her, but mentally he's just gone. Side note, I like how the writers included Brad and Amy in Emilia's backstory, where they made it so that Emilia's brother Liam had conversations with the both of them back when he was still alive, which led them all to come up with the idea of starting Ratland together. Basically, Liam had a part in creating Ratland, but RIP Ratland. But come to think of it, Ratland isn't really needed anymore because the whole of Las Vistas is now a safe haven for both mutes and humans to live in, based on what we saw in the epilogue. But I still wish they'd rebuilt it because it's also an amusement park, and who wouldn't want to have one in their city? As for the fate of all the cured mutes at the end of the series, you might think, oh, this is just a kids show, everything is going to work out fine, they're definitely going to turn back into their old selves again. Wrong. We were thrown in for a loop because they're still in their simple animal forms even during the epilogue. I actually respect the show's decision to leave things that way because it's important to show the long-lasting consequences of Emilia and the humans' actions. Something has to give in order to achieve peace, and being realistic like that is really refreshing to watch. However, it is surprising that Song or Leo couldn't find a way to reverse the effects of the cure, even after 5 years, which I will get into all of that later on. I previously did a video talking about the importance of Troyson in representing quality male same-sex romantic relationships in Western animation, so please check that video out after watching this. Now that Kipo is over, I definitely want to talk about their relationship in great detail in a separate video, so for now, I'll just summarize what I thought about them in one word. Incredible, and I'll leave it at that. First of all, the mix of tunes that were utilized this season was catchy AF. I immediately went on Spotify to find almost every song after listening to them in their episodes. Plus, I was living my life when I heard those two K-pop-esque songs that vaguely sounded like BTS songs in episode 2, which are Ocean of Love and Drowning, performed by a group of Dolphicon boys. I initially thought it was sung by an actual K-pop artist, but in fact, the voice behind the main singer, Raymond J. Lee, is more of an actor than he is a singer. Besides that, 3 other songs struck a chord with me, and they were Sugar, Age of Wonderbeasts, and their promposal/apology song in episode 8. I actually went on Kipo's Reddit page to ask everyone on there what is the name of their promposal song, and the writer of the song surprisingly responded to my question, and they said it's called Make Something New. Sugar is a great song to jam to in the club or in your bedroom. Age of Wonderbeasts was a perfect song to end the series with, and as for Make Something New, it's mostly because Troy sounded amazing in his parts. Let's go back to that epilogue, because everybody was serving looks, let me tell you, like everybody. Benson and Troy look handsome as hell, Wolf looks amazing and her hair is just gorgeous, Kipo is also serving fierce rocker looks here, plus I really want to try out Kipo's hairstyle one day, and Mandu, OMG, look at her. She's huge, just like Bornek and Weber. And at that size, she can practically rule the world now because even as a cute little boar, she was kicking serious ass. With everyone else, they look pretty much the same, I think. I wish we also got to see Asher and Dahlia because I'm confident that those two will be serving major looks 5 years later as well. Mostly Asher because their hair was a mood this season. Moving on to the lows. Well, I don't think there were any true lows this season, but just some things that irked me slightly, starting with these two. Seriously, I'm not even being funny here, they were both really annoying and I didn't need them to be included at all this season. I just have this irrational hate towards them for some reason. Okay, this is something about the show that really had me perplexed, and it's about the scientific aspects of the story, starting with the Great Mute Outbreak. First of all, I really wanted to know what was the cause of the Great Mute Outbreak in the first place. Was it ever explained on the show? But if you ask me to take an educated guess, I'm assuming that it was caused by some sort of biological mutagen, most probably a virus since the word vaccine was thrown around a lot in Season 3. From my research, viruses can cause mutations by inserting their DNA into our cells, which disrupts the DNA inside, causing our bodies to produce viral proteins instead of our own. And these viral proteins are dangerous because they can have a negative impact on our cellular functions like gene regulation. That's the end of my little genetics and molecular biology course for ya. As we know from Season 2, Song was successfully able to isolate the mutagen by experimenting with different formulas on Hugo, whom then was just a mandrill, to figure out which specific formula contained the mutagen that had eventually triggered his mutation, giving him the ability to talk and have intellectual thoughts. Having isolated the mutagen, she and her fellow colleagues were supposed to then reverse engineer the formula to make a cure to demute the mutes. And that was what Emilia wanted to get her hands on for years until the Season 2 finale when she manages to steal Song's Project Kipo book. Although, couldn't have Emilia and her team ransacked Song and Leo's apartment years ago to find that journal? Maybe she didn't bother going back there considering the fact that Fungus now lives there. Speaking of Project Kipo, Emilia finds out that our dear Kipo's DNA is needed to make the right formula for the genetic cure by figuring out that X in Song's journal is actually referring to Kipo. This bit of information kind of made me a little confused because does that mean the original formula that mutated Hugo had Kipo's recombinant DNA in it so that the relevant genes will be expressed in Hugo's body to kickstart his mutation? Side note, recombinant DNA meaning Kipo's DNA that was combined with the DNA of Mega Jaguars. I'm getting the timelines a little confused here. Am I correct in saying that Project Kipo first started when Hugo was still a normal mandrill, and Song used Kipo's recombinant DNA and incorporated it into various formulas to test for the mutation? Because when Hugo had already mutated, Song was pregnant with Kipo. Or did Project Kipo had nothing to do with the development of the cure at that time, and they didn't use Kipo's DNA to turn Hugo into a mute, and it was the DNA from some other species? I'm guessing the former would make more sense because the serum Emilia used worked on all the species except for the Mega Jaguar. Also, regarding the cured mutes, I'm sure there's some way for them to mutate back, right? If Song was able to isolate the mutagen, couldn't she have used the same mutagen on them? I read people's theories online saying that even if they did mutate back into their original selves, their memories wouldn't come back. Now that's true, but explain why Song was able to remember who she was almost immediately after being cured, despite being trapped in another form for 13 years. I just feel like there were some inconsistencies with the science behind this show. Moving on, let's also talk about the vaccine that Song and Leo were working on, or was supposed to be working on because that mini plot was kind of dropped in the last 2 episodes. Were they successful in creating a vaccine or not? I think that's a pretty big thing to leave out at the end because that was pretty much Song and Leo's main thing in Season 3. And I reckon that vaccinating the mutes, despite Emilia no longer being a threat to them, is still pretty important because she can't be the only human left on Earth who wants to eliminate the mutes, right? I don't think Las Vistas is the only place on Earth where humans and mutes live, no? Unless everybody else on Earth have died or something and the only habitable place left is Las Vistas. But I doubt that. Anyways, I just find it strange that the vaccine wasn't brought up again. Maybe in future movies, perhaps? Also, side note, I thought vaccines are meant to protect us from viruses and not to protect us from cures that actually reverse the effects of viruses. Strange, huh? Lastly, I found it strange that they didn't end up resolving Wolf's conflict with Margot since that whole thing was front and center in episode 3. But it's safe to say that there's no chance of doing that now since Margot has demuted into a regular wolf. It's too bad she can't redeem herself anymore. I wonder if Wolf knows that she's devolved. Or maybe she just doesn't give a crap about her since she double-crossed her for the second time in this season. One of the things that annoyed me about Kipo this season was her inability to be consistent in her thinking and decision making. Also, I found her to be really complacent throughout the season, especially in episode 6, which led to many of the mutes getting cured under her watch. At first, Kipo seemed like she was willing to end Emilia's life by getting her to touch Death Ivy, but eventually she couldn't follow through with her plan because she didn't expect the other humans to tag along with her. Later on, after a bunch of her friends were cured, she was fully ready to sink a boat containing not just Emilia, but all the other humans on board without any hesitation, when she almost certainly knows that those humans are being influenced by Emilia. And afterwards, Kipo flips her mind once more and convinces the humans, including Emilia, to make peace with her and the mutes. That's fine and all, but I just find her stance on what to do with Emilia pretty shaky. My problem is Kipo thinks that she can only do one of two things to Emilia, with option A being kill her, and option B is to give her the choice to join the alliance. There's no in-between for some reason, and that made me somewhat frustrated because why didn't her or anyone else, in particular Scarlemagne and Wolf, just think of putting her and even Greta in jail or capturing them like they did with Scarlemagne? Jailing Emilia wouldn't necessarily make the humans think that the mutes are double-crossing them. In fact, I think that a lot of them would be okay to have her in jail as a precautionary measure because they did express that they don't agree with a lot of her decisions, especially after the events of episode 6. Another thing, in the series finale, Kipo was still willing to give Emilia a chance even after knocking her out cold, almost killing her parents, and nearly demuting every single mute in Las Vistas with the stunt she pulled with the rigged fireworks. But girl, like again, before this, you're about to let her walk into Death Ivy and sink an entire boat full of adults and the children you grew up with, including Doug by the way, without thinking things over. Keep it consistent. She low-key reminded me of Glimmer from She-Ra and the Princesses of Power for making so many bad calls this season, and it's not just because she and Kipo share the same voice actress. Trigger warning ahead. Scarlemagne/Hugo should have lived. Point blank period. I don't care which way you spin this, he shouldn't have died. Especially with the way he went out. That crash didn't even look fatal to begin with. That's just number one. No, but seriously, Scarlemagne was like 90% redeemed in my eyes, and maybe about 80% redeemed by everyone else's standards. Sure, he has killed mutes, and I'm sure humans in the past, but you can't tell me that Catra from She-Ra is a redeemable character and deserves to live, but Scarlemagne must die in order to fully redeem himself? If that's the case, Catra should be dead right now, but she isn't. In addition, he helped out Kipo on more than a couple of occasions this season. Let's go over them. First, he helped trap the humans when they invaded Timbercat Village. He also helped decipher what Song was trying to tell Kipo with regards to Emilia's weakness. Number 3, he helped Wolf to take down Greta in order to find out Emilia's whereabouts. Lastly, he bravely took action and drove himself straight into Emilia when she was pummeling the stuff out of Kipo. Also, who got chills when he shouted to the Mega Mute Emilia, "Leave my sister alone!" Now that was deep. Leave my sister alone! Ah! Oh, and not to mention, he gave sincere apologies to both the mutes and humans on 2 separate occasions. If that's not being on his way to Redemptionville, I don't know what is, because killing him off like that was so unnecessary. I kind of feel robbed that we will never get to see him live a normal life with the family he desired to have for such a long time. And now that he's starting to get that love from them again, he gets buried 6 feet under? Really? The highs definitely overshadowed the somewhat lows of the season. Given the limited number of episodes, I'm impressed with the show's ability to fit in what it could, and at the same time, resolve the main narrative arc pretty nicely. Boy, it wasn't perfect. But did it meet my expectations? Yes. Moreover, the decisions not to address certain plot points like Song and Leo's vaccine might be due to the creators or writers saving those for possible films being greenlit in the near future, which I really hope we will get a bunch of Kipo films to watch someday. Prior to actually watching Kipo and reading up on the show's development last year, I knew that the show was going to be something special, because I was aware of creator Radford Setris' work on How to Train Your Dragon and Kung Fu Panda, and the animation studio Studio Mir's beautiful work on The Legend of Korra and Voltron. So I definitely had some high hopes, and it's such an awesome feeling to have when your expectations are not only met, but exceeded on a lot of fronts. And lastly, the show really resonated with me as someone who stands good LGBT representation, in particular the representation of gay male couples on television. And to see two male cartoon characters share a healthy and romantic relationship on screen together truly warms my heart. Like I hinted to you earlier, I will be diving deep into Troyson in a separate video, so please stay tuned for that, and subscribe to my channel in the meantime to know when that video is posted. Thank you all so much for watching my spoiler review of the final season of Kipo and the Age of Wonderbeasts. Please comment down below on what your thoughts are on my commentary, which parts do you agree or disagree on, and don't forget to like and share this video as well. Have a great day ahead. Hamufa!